Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today's video is all about the concerns surrounding genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. As you may already know, GMOs have been a controversial topic for quite some time now, with people holding strong opinions on both sides of the debate. In this video, we will be discussing four main concerns that have been raised about GMOs. These include potential impacts on human health, environmental concerns, ethical considerations, and the issue of labeling. We'll take a look into each of these concerns, exploring both the arguments for and against GMOs, and discussing the latest research and developments in this area. So, whether you're a die-hard GMO opponent, a staunch supporter, or someone who's just curious to learn more, we hope you'll find this video informative and thought-provoking. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. One of the main concerns about eating GMO foods is their potential impact on human health. Some people worry that the process of genetic modification could introduce unexpected toxins or allergens into the food supply, which could pose a risk to human health. For example, if a gene from a plant that is known to produce a harmful substance is introduced into a crop that is commonly consumed, there is a risk that the harmful substance could be present in the food. Additionally, some studies have suggested that genetically modified crops may have lower nutrient levels than their non-modified counterparts, which could have negative health effects over the long term. While the scientific community has not yet reached a consensus on the safety of GMO foods, there is evidence to suggest that some genetically modified crops are safe to eat. For example, genetically modified crops have been in use since the mid-1990s, and there have been no documented cases of adverse health effects from consuming these crops. Additionally, regulatory agencies such as the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, require that genetically modified foods undergo rigorous testing to ensure their safety before they can be approved for sale. However, some critics argue that this testing may not be sufficient to fully evaluate the potential risks associated with GMO foods, and that more research is needed to fully understand their impact on human health. Another concern about GMO foods is their potential impact on the environment. Many genetically modified crops are engineered to be resistant to pesticides or herbicides, which can lead to the overuse of these chemicals and harm local ecosystems. For example, if farmers are using more pesticides to control pests on genetically modified crops, this could lead to the development of pesticide-resistant insects, which could then require even more pesticides to be used. This could create a cycle of overuse that could harm the environment and potentially have negative effects on human health. Additionally, there are concerns that genetically modified crops could crossbreed with wild plants, creating new invasive species that could harm local ecosystems. For example, if a genetically modified crop that is engineered to be resistant to herbicides crossbreeds with a wild plant, this could create a new plant that is also resistant to herbicides, which could then spread rapidly and outcompete native plants. This could have negative effects on biodiversity and could harm local ecosystems. While the long-term environmental impact of GMO crops is still being studied, it is clear that there are potential risks associated with their use, and that more research is needed to fully understand these risks. Some people have raised ethical concerns about genetically modifying organisms, particularly in terms of animal welfare and human exploitation. For example, some genetically modified animals have been created for use in medical research, and there are concerns about the welfare of these animals and the potential for them to be exploited for human benefit. Additionally, there are concerns that genetically modified crops could be used to benefit large corporations at the expense of small farmers and indigenous communities. For example, if a genetically modified crop is patented by a large corporation, this could make it difficult for small farmers to compete, and could potentially harm indigenous communities that rely on traditional crops for their livelihoods. There are also concerns about the potential for genetically modified organisms to be used for military purposes, such as creating genetically modified viruses or bacteria that could be used as bioweapons. While there are international conventions that prohibit the development and use of biological weapons, some people worry that the use of genetic engineering could make it easier to develop and use these types of weapons. It is important to ensure that the development and use of genetically modified organisms is done in an ethical and responsible way, and that there are safeguards in place to prevent them from being used for harmful purposes. Another concern that has been raised about GMO foods is the issue of labeling. Many people believe that GMO food should be labeled as such, so that consumers can make informed decisions about what they are eating. Proponents of labeling argue that consumers have a right to know what is in their food, and that labeling would allow people who are concerned about GMOs to make choices that align with their values. Additionally, labeling could help to increase transparency in the food industry and could encourage companies to use fewer GMOs in their products. However, opponents of labeling argue that it could create confusion and stigmatize GMO foods. They argue that labeling could give the impression that GMO foods are unsafe or inferior, even though there is no evidence to support this claim. Additionally, labeling could be expensive for food companies, who would need to develop new packaging and labeling systems to comply with the regulations. Despite these concerns, several countries around the world, including many in the European Union, require labeling of GMO foods. In the United States, some states have passed laws requiring labeling, but there is no federal requirement to do so. And that will do it for today's video. We hope you enjoyed learning about the concerns surrounding genetically modified organisms. As we've seen, there are many different opinions and perspectives on this topic, and it's clear that more research and discussion is needed in order to fully understand the potential benefits and risks of GMOs. We encourage you to continue the conversation in the comments below. What are your thoughts on GMOs? Do you believe there are valid concerns that need to be addressed, or do you think the benefits outweigh the risks? We'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. See you in the next video.